Before the sun ever pierces the canopy, the ancient lungs of Borneo are already breathing. Here in Sabah, life exists in a towering, vertical world, and for the solitary orangutan, every single hour of daylight is a calculated race against gravity. To drop to the forest floor is to invite the shadows. He will not touch the earth today, but as the clock ticks toward twilight, he must achieve one monumental task before total darkness swallows the emerald canopy, or risk everything. Before the sun breaks the horizon, the ancient, multi-layered primary dipterocarp rainforests of Sabah, Malaysia, lie suspended in a heavy, breathless twilight. It is 5 o'clock in the morning, and this sprawling emerald kingdom is wrapped in a thick, cooling blanket of tropical mist. This is one of the oldest and most complex terrestrial ecosystems on our planet, and in these fleeting, shadowy hours, it breathes quietly. The temperature is at its lowest, and a profound atmospheric stillness permeates the massive vertical pillars of wood that hold up the sky. The very canopy architecture of this jungle is defined by water. Heavy tropical condensation gathers on the roof, dripping incessantly onto the massive, waxy leaves of the understory below. It is a rhythmic, life-giving pulse that echoes through the damp darkness. High in the mist-shrouded canopy, the nocturnal shift slowly comes to an end. The secretive, slow loris, having spent the long night navigating the intricate labyrinth of damp vines, makes its cautious retreat to a sheltered hollow, its massive, reflective eyes adjusting to the incoming light. Down on the dark, wet forest floor, the ground dwellers begin to stir. The vibrant, crested fireback pheasant walks delicately over decaying logs, pecking quietly at the damp leaf litter to find its first meal. Nearby, resting perfectly still upon a dew-drenched leaf, the brilliant green Wallace's flying frog absorbs the morning moisture directly through its highly specialized skin, its throat pulsating gently in the cool air. As the muted blue hues of dawn gently filter through the dense foliage, the undisputed monarch of this towering world begins to awaken. A solitary Bornean orangutan, an apex primate of immense intelligence and profound, gentle strength, opens its dark, knowing eyes. Perfectly adapted to an arboreal existence, it sits majestic and still, wiping the heavy morning dew from its weathered face. It surveys its vast, vertical domain with a quiet, ancient reverence. Suddenly, the tranquil silence of the morning is shattered by a magnificent sound. The rhinoceros hornbill throws back its massive, brilliantly colored casque, unleashing a resonant, echoing call that travels for miles across the misty valleys. It is the primal alarm clock of the rainforest, signaling the official beginning of a new, arduous day governed by a strict circadian rhythm of survival. As the morning matures, the cool dawn mists are burned away by a bright, overcast sky. The diffused daylight cuts through the ancient branches, and the true, staggering scale of this biodiversity hotspot is finally revealed. The canopy bursts into a frantic, high-energy rhythm of life. The great orangutan, driven by a deep evolutionary mandate to consume thousands of calories, moves with an effortless, fluid grace. Despite its immense weight, it relies on masterful arboreal navigation, utilizing its incredibly flexible joints and hook-like hands to swing across vast, dizzying gaps, pulling distant branches closer to expertly pluck tender young leaves and ripe red berries. This solitary primate does not exist in a vacuum. It is the silent overseer of an intensely interconnected ecological balance. Deep in the tangled understory beneath the swinging ape, small herds of Bornean pygmy elephants carve ancient, muddy pathways through the thick green ferns. Sharing the lower branches near the muddy riverbanks, highly vocal troops of proboscis monkeys leap acrobatically through the transition zones, their specialized digestive systems allowing them to feast heavily upon toxic mangrove leaves. Even the absolute smallest inhabitants play a crucial, monumental role in this bustling tropical metropolis. Endless columns of giant forest ants march relentlessly over exposed, mossy roots, acting as the tireless scavengers and soil engineers of the jungle floor. Higher up, catching the soft morning light, the brilliant Raja Brooks birdwing butterfly flutters delicately among the blooming mid-story flowers. Yet, danger is ever present in this vibrant paradise. Along the muddy banks of the sluggish rivers, the enormous Asian water monitor patrols the shallows, its forked tongue flicking to taste the humid air for the scent of prey. The orangutan, ever observant, maintains a strict, necessary elevation, understanding instinctively that the ground below is a theater of lethal predators. High above this perilous floor, the colossal dipterocarp trees form a towering cathedral of emerald foliage, their massive trunks anchored by sprawling buttress roots that have withstood centuries of torrential monsoons. The piercing, unmistakable calls of rhinoceros hornbills echo through the vast canopy, their heavy wings beating rhythmically as they glide between ancient fruiting figs. A clouded leopard, perfectly camouflaged among the dappled shadows of the mid-canopy, rests silently on a sturdy limb, its keen amber eyes scanning the bustling undergrowth below for any sign of careless movement. In a forest built on water, a sudden deluge is a test of endurance. A drenched coat doubles his weight, turning every calculated swing into a perilous gamble. By midday, the sun climbs to its absolute zenith, baking the heavy tropical cloud cover into a suffocating, radiant dome. The temperature peaks drastically, and the humidity becomes an oppressive, physical weight that pushes down on the lungs of every living creature. In response, a profound and necessary paralysis overtakes the entire jungle ecosystem. In its place rises the deafening, continuous, mechanical drone of millions of unseen cicadas, a sound that vibrates through the very wood of the trees. Survival in the extreme equatorial climate requires an absolute cessation of physical exertion. The strange, musky binturong powers down in the cooling embrace of a shaded canopy fork, perfectly adapted to its unique ecological niche. The magnificent Sunda clouded leopard, its beautiful rosettes blending flawlessly into the dappled shade, closes its pale eyes, becoming a sleeping ghost within the deep foliage density. The orangutan, feeling the intense, rising pressure of the midday sun, retreats to the deepest, darkest pockets of the mid-story canopy to find a cooler microclimate. Demonstrating remarkable problem-solving abilities, it deliberately breaks massive fronds to fashion a rudimentary sunshade, protecting its sensitive face from the relentless heat. For 3 grueling hours, the entire biome is united by exhaustion, holding its collective breath. Beneath the towering dipterocarp giants, the forest floor experiences this extreme equatorial climate in a slightly different manner. Down here, in the perpetual twilight caused by the immense overhead foliage density, the stillness is just as absolute, but it is a damp, suffocating quiet. Termite colonies, deeply entrenched within the damp wood of fallen titans, retreat into the coolest subterranean chambers of their intricate mounds. They are masters of their specific ecological niche, utilizing complex architectural ventilation systems to survive the punishing heat radiating from the earth above. Even the serpentine rivers that carve through the emerald heart of the island seem to slow their relentless flow, the murky waters turning sluggish under the glaring sun. A massive estuarine crocodile, a prehistoric survivor perfectly adapted to this brutal equatorial climate, hauls its heavily armored bulk onto a muddy embankment. Every organism instinctively understands the strict rules of survival dictated by this unforgiving ecological niche. As the grueling hours drag on, a subtle but profound shift begins to occur in the atmosphere. A sudden drop in atmospheric pressure sends a silent signal throughout the entire jungle hierarchy. High in its shaded refuge, the Sunda clouded leopard stirs from its deep slumber. The sheer foliage density above transforms from a sun-baked shield into a giant umbrella. With a crack of thunder, the torrential rain arrives, shattering the midday paralysis and breathing life back into the forest. As the amber light begins to bleed into deeper shades of violet and indigo, the great orangutan finally abandons its foraging. High in the secure fork of a sturdy, unyielding tree, it begins the intricate and vital daily ritual of nest construction. With practiced, effortless grace, it bends thick branches inward, snapping and weaving them together into a robust, springy foundation. The great ape settles into the woven cradle, pulling a final blanket of broad leaves over its massive russet frame, just as the last blinding sliver of the sun dips below the western horizon. The transition of power within the jungle is swift, absolute, and uncompromising. The visual majesty of the day gracefully surrenders to a kingdom entirely ruled by sound, vibration, and scent. The raucous, echoing calls of the rhinoceros hornbills and the territorial whoops of the agile gibbons are abruptly silenced, replaced by an entirely new, deafening symphony. Millions of cicadas simultaneously erupt into a rhythmic, pulsating drone, creating a physical wall of sound that reverberates through the dense, tangled foliage. Shadows rapidly lengthen and merge, violently swallowing the towering trunks and hanging vines, until the forest floor is entirely submerged in total, impenetrable darkness. Now, the true rulers of the Bornean night emerge from the concealing gloom. The western tarsier, a tiny, specialized primate with impossibly large, luminous eyes, clings vertically to a slender sapling. It swivels its head with an eerie, mechanical precision, piercing the darkness for the faintest movement of a katydid or moth, before launching itself into the black void with terrifying, silent accuracy. The mid-story canopy quickly transforms into a busy highway for flying squirrels, silently gliding from tree to tree like spectral shadows against the faint, starlit patches of the sky overhead. Yet, the absolute master of this shadowed realm moves without making a single discernible sound. The Sunda clouded leopard, draped in a magnificent coat of beautifully marbled rosettes, silently descends from its elevated daytime hideout. It is an apex ghost in the darkness, utilizing its incredibly long, thick tail for flawless balance as it navigates the treacherous, pitch-black understory. For the sleeping orangutan tucked safely in its high nest, and the nervous bantang cattle huddled tightly together in the deepest thickets, the night represents a perilous, ongoing trial of endurance. The great jungle has successfully completed its daily respiration, inhaling the brilliant light of the tropical day and exhaling the primal, deeply predatory breath of the untamed wilderness. As the clock passes 5:15, the warm golden light rapidly decays into a profound, dusty blue twilight. The sun dips below the horizon, and the immense, tangled valleys of Sabah are swallowed by creeping, chilling shadows. The temperature drops noticeably, and the humid mist rises heavily from the dark riverbanks, wrapping the ancient tree trunks in an ethereal, ghostly glow. Along the muddy shores, a colossal reticulated python tightens its muscular coils in the gloom, its forked tongue flicking to taste the cooling air. The colossal saltwater crocodile slips silently beneath the black surface of the river. The undisputed ancient predators of the dark have officially taken the stage. High above, the phantom of the forest, the Malayan colugo, spreads its incredible gliding membranes, launching itself silently into the abyss of the canopy. For the solitary Bornean orangutan, this fading light triggers the most complex and critical ritual of its entire day. Remaining on the dangerous ground, or even on a low, exposed branch, is a guaranteed death sentence. Driven by centuries of inherited architectural knowledge, the great ape ascends to the highest, most secluded crown of a carefully chosen tree. Here, with immense physical power and astonishing engineering intelligence, the nest building begins. Thick, rigid branches are violently snapped and forcefully bent inwards, woven together to form a highly resilient, living foundation. This structure must be capable of supporting hundreds of pounds against the unpredictable tropical winds. The ape works with frantic precision as the blue mist completely envelops its silhouette. Smaller, flexible twigs are masterfully woven into a secure outer rim to prevent any accidental falls. Finally, massive handfuls of the softest, greenest leaves are pressed flat into the center, creating a plush, insect-repelling mattress. In mere minutes, chaotic jungle foliage is transformed into a secure, impenetrable fortress in the sky. By 1900 hours, the very last sliver of daylight has completely vanished. The great ape settles deeply into its woven bed, pulling a large frond over its shoulders to act as a natural blanket against the creeping cold. It lets out a remarkably long, heavy, resonant of absolute exhaustion. Its profoundly intelligent ancient eyes finally close against the encroaching darkness. Far below, the nocturnal jungle erupts into a deafening, chaotic, and beautiful roar of millions of insects and hidden hunting beasts. But high above the treacherous floor, safely suspended in the thick tropical mist, the king of the canopy sleeps undisturbed, resting in perfect, magnificent harmony with the wild heartbeat of the emerald lungs of Borneo. The canopy is finally at peace. He will sleep safely above the shadows. But 100 feet below, the true masters of the Bornean night are just waking up. To see what hunts in the dark, step into the midnight jungle right here.